They made Sera Veyne kneel before the Horn of True Quarry because a scarred maid was easier to call traitor than a commander with blood on his gloves. No one asked why a horn built to name quarry needed a maid's scar if the hunt path had been clean. A clean path did not need a scar to explain it. The horn waited at the center of the royal hall, taller than a man, and curved like the rib of some ancient silver beast. It rested on a black stone stand carved with running wolves' old prey marks, and the names of hunts the court still praised because no one had been allowed to read them honestly. Hunts became history when commanders survived to name the prey, and dead hunters could not correct the route. Sera knelt beneath it with her hands bound in front of her. Not chained. Cord again. Caelthrone loved cord for low-born bodies. Cord said the accused was already too weak to matter. Cord let nobles pretend restraint was mercy. The scar across Sera's left cheek pulled tight when she lifted her face. She did not lower it again. Above her, the werewolf court watched from crescent balconies wrapped in dark fur. Noble hunters wore polished antlers at their shoulders. Ladies held silver fans painted with kill scenes. War captains stood with their hands on sword hilts not because they feared her but because the theater of fear made judgment feel noble. Commander Garin Mael stood beside the horn. He was a broad man with iron-gray hair, a square jaw, and the calm of someone who had survived many lies by making others kneel beneath them. A white hunt cloak hung from his shoulders, trimmed in wolf teeth. At his belt rested a curved hunting blade still stained dark near the hilt. Sera had seen that stain before. Not on the blade. On the forest leaves the night the royal hunt failed. Blood remembered iron differently when it dried outside a wound. The blade at Garin's belt had been cleaned. The leaves had not. Garin lifted his hand. Sera Veyne, lower hall maid, scarred by the same ambush that took 7 royal hunters and nearly ended the Alpha King's life, stands accused of luring the hunt party into the eastern ravine. A murmur moved through the hall. Sera kept her breathing slow. The eastern ravine still lived inside her dreams, rain over black roots, horses, screaming wolves, howling where no wolves should have been, arrows falling from trees like metal hail. She remembered carrying water for the hunting party because servants were useful until danger began. She remembered warning them the ravine smelled wrong. No one had listened. By dawn, 7 hunters were dead. The king was bloodied, and Sera's face had been opened from cheekbone to jaw by a blade she never saw coming. That scar had become the court's favorite evidence. No one asked whether a scar could keep the shape of the blade that made it. A scar was a poor witness until the court needed it guilty. Survivors were suspicious when they were poor. Garin turned toward the Black Wolf throne. By hunt law, if the condemned kneels before the Horn of True Quarry, the horn will call the soul the failed hunt was meant to claim. If it calls her, the charge stands. At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Rovan Caelth sat without moving. Power did not need him to rise. It settled over the court in the shape of his silence. He wore black armor with silver wolfwork along the chest, his dark hair falling loose to his shoulders, his face severe and beautiful, in a way that made warmth seem dangerous. His eyes were pale amber, too controlled to be kind. Behind him, his wolf shadow covered the wall like a storm beast, massive but tense, its ears angled toward the Horn of True Quarry, as if it hated the relic before it sounded. Sera noticed. Of course she did. Maids survived by noticing what powerful people forgot their bodies said. Rovan's wolf shadow did not look toward her. It watched the commanders. A king could doubt a servant. His wolf could doubt the room. Rovan had trusted his caution more than his beast. Garin bowed toward the throne. Majesty, with your permission, the Horn of True Quarry will sound. Rovan's gaze fell to Sera. There was no softness in it. Only scrutiny sharp enough to cut. You were the only servant who returned alive, he said. Sera met his eyes. I was the only servant they failed to finish. The hall stirred. Garin's mouth tightened. She speaks boldly because guilt has no rank left to lose. Rovan did not look away. And why should the horn not name you? Because I did not lead your hunters into that ravine. Then who did? Sera looked at Garin. Only for one breath. Too brief for accusation. Long enough for a commander to understand warning. I was carrying water, she said. Not orders. And water did not choose ravines. Orders did. Garin stepped closer. The condemned will not turn ceremony into slander. Rovan's fingers curled once on the arm of the throne. He had seen the glance. He had also survived the ravine, and survival could make a king cautious in cruel directions. Proceed, he said. The word passed through Sera like cold rain. The court leaned in. Garin placed both hands on the silver horn. Its mouth faced Sera like an open moon. Old runes along its curve began to glow pale blue. The air filled with the smell of wet leaves, iron horse sweat, and deep forest rot. Sera's scar burned, not with pain, with memory. The Horn of True Quarry sounded. It did not call her name. It did not send spectral wolves toward her. Instead, the sound dropped low, ancient and hungry, rolling through the hall like a hunt beginning under a dead moon. Silver mist spilled from the horn's mouth. One spectral wolf appeared. Then another. Then a full pack of ghostly hunt wolves formed around the dais, lean and silver-eyed, their ears lifting as they searched for quarry. They were not spirits. They were quarry marks shaped by the path the horn remembered. Quarry marks did not protect. They pointed. The court held its breath. Garin smiled too soon. Then every spectral wolf turned away from Sera. One by one they faced the black wolf throne. Alpha King Rovan Caelth stood. The Horn of True Quarry sounded again, and this time the call wrapped around him like a noose. True prey named. Royal blood marked. Hunt path altered. King death intended. The horn had named the prey. It had not yet named the hand that altered the path. And a path did not alter itself. The Horn of True Quarry had named the king as prey, but not the hand that changed the hunt. A hand could change a path. A blade could change the witness. Sera remained on her knees beneath the silver horn, hands bound, scar burning from cheekbone to jaw. The quarry marks did not gather around her. They did not bare their teeth at the commanders. They did not lower their heads in loyalty. The spectral hunt wolves only kept facing the black wolf throne, lean bodies carved from mist and old moonlight ears, fixed on Alpha King Rovan Caelth, as if the hunt had finally remembered its true direction. That made the hall more dangerous. A protected woman could be called favored. A pointed at king could make an entire court afraid. Commander Garin Mael's smile had vanished, but his discipline had not. He stepped away from the Horn of True Quarry, one gloved hand lowering toward the curved hunting blade at his belt. Servant scar contamination, he said. Garin made the scar sound like a sickness because he knew it had begun as a cut. The phrase landed quickly, cleanly, like a cloak thrown over blood. Several nobles breathed again. Garin turned toward the court. The horn has reacted to the condemned woman's wound. A scar made during a failed hunt can distort the path call. Hunt path records cannot be tried through a servant's scar. Sera looked up at him. You liked my scar better when it accused me. A few hunters shifted their weight. Garin's eyes hardened. The condemned will speak only when questioned. Rovan stood before the throne, his wolf shadow spread behind him like storm-black fur across the wall. The beast no longer watched Sera. It watched Garin. It watched the captains near him. Its hackles were raised, but it did not leap. It did not bow. It did not claim certainty the king himself had refused to trust. Rovan's gaze dropped to Sera. You said the ravine smelled wrong. I did. Before the ambush. Before the path turned. Garin cut in. Majesty, the accused admitted she was near the route markers. I carried water, Sera said. Not orders. The horn's silver runes flickered. The quarry marks shifted one step, still facing the throne. Quarry marks did not protect. They pointed. Pointing could still leave the accused on her knees. Sera felt the burn in her scar deepen. Not like the wound reopening, like the memory beneath it, pressing against skin, wanting a shape. She lifted her bound hands toward the Horn of True Quarry. Read who altered the path. Garin moved at once. No. Too fast. Rovan heard it. So did Sera. The horn's mouth darkened with blue-silver mist. Garin raised his gloved hand, palm outward. The glove was white leather stitched with black thread across the knuckles, the ceremonial command glove worn by royal hunt leaders to mark route authority. Sera remembered seeing that glove in the rain, briefly lit by lightning near the ravine stones. The same hand. The same thread. The same blade stain near the wrist. Garin stepped toward the horn. The path call is closed. The Horn of True Quarry sounded before his hand touched it. The sound did not shake the hall. It narrowed it. Mist flowed from the horn's mouth and formed 4 pale lines in the air. Commander Glove entered. Ravine path altered. Royal scent marked. Servant scar blamed. The horn had named the path. It had not yet named the blade that made her scar useful. Sera's breath caught. Not because she was surprised, because the room had finally heard what her scar had carried alone. Rovan read the lines without moving. His face became very still at the third. Royal scent marked. The quarry-marks turned their heads in perfect unison toward Garen's glove. Garen lowered his hand slowly. Route authority allows adjustment under shifting hunt conditions. Sera's voice was quiet. Not toward an ambush. The maid does not understand hunt tactics. No, she said, but I understand when wolves are sent where men already wait with arrows. The court stirred harder now. 7 dead royal hunters had names, families, debts, rivals, witnesses. A dead hunt could be praised when its path stayed clean. An altered path would wake too many questions. Rovan stepped down one stair from the throne platform. Garen bowed. Majesty, I urge restraint. The horn is reading through a wound made in panic. A scar records pain, not command. Sera looked at the king. You wanted the horn to name my scar. It named your path. Rovan's jaw tightened. The words found him where armor did not reach. His wolf shadow had distrusted the room before the horn sounded. It had watched the commanders while he watched her. The beast had known where the rot gathered, and Rovan had still chosen the clean ceremony because a scarred maid was easier to test than the men who held his hunt lines. His voice came low. I said proceed after my wolf watched the commanders. His admission did not free her. It only made his trust in ceremony stand beside Garen's glove. Garen saw the shift and reached for his blade. Rovan's wolf shadow snarled without sound. The commander drew the curved hunting blade halfway from its sheath. The dark stain near the hilt caught the horn's light. Sera's scar burned so sharply she almost bent forward. The Horn of True Quarry noticed. Its sound deepened and one quarry mark broke from the pack, not toward Sera, not toward Rovan, but toward the blade in Garen's hand. The horn had stopped following scent. It had begun following iron. The spectral wolf stopped before the weapon and lifted its muzzle. Garen shoved the blade back into its sheath. This is enough. No, Sera said. It is only the first path. Garen's command glove flared with black threadlight. He placed his gloved palm against the horn's silver curve. The runes flickered violently. The quarry marks blurred. Sera felt the scar on her face pull tight, as if the blade that made it had come close again. Rovan took another step. Garen's voice sharpened. Majesty, if you interfere, every hunter in this hall will say grief has turned you against your own command. Rovan stopped. Sera understood the trap. If he seized Garen now, the commanders would call the horn politically corrupted. If he freed her now, they would call her royal shielded. If the record closed now, her scar would remain the only thing the court wanted to read. So she leaned toward the horn, still on her knees. Read before his glove buries the root, and before his blade buries my face again. The Horn of True Quarry gave one final call. The mist snapped into a single image rain over Black Root's route stones, turned by a white-gloved hand. Rovan's royal scent smeared across the ravine marker, and Sera stumbling through leaves as a blade flashed near her face. Garen's command glove had altered the hunt path, marked Rovan's royal scent as quarry, and left Sera's scar to carry the blame. But a scar did not become blame by itself. The Horn of True Quarry had named Garen's glove, but not the blade that made Sera's scar. A blade could silence a witness. It could not explain what waited in the ravine. The image over the hall still trembled in silver mist rain, over Black Root's route stones turned by a white-gloved hand. Rovan's royal scent smeared across the ravine marker, and Sera's body stumbling through leaves as iron flashed toward her face. Then the vision thinned, leaving only the burn in her cheek and the quarry mark standing before Garen's sheathed blade. Sera remained on her knees, bound, accused. The court had seen enough to fear the root, but not enough to free the woman who had carried its proof. That was how courts survived truth, by asking for one more layer while the contact bled. Quarry marks did not protect. They pointed, and pointing could still leave the accused kneeling beneath the same horn that had nearly condemned her. And every point still required someone powerful enough to follow it. Garen Mael's command glove no longer touched the Horn of True Quarry, but the black thread across its knuckles pulsed faintly as if the relic had left teeth in the leather. His other hand stayed near his hunting blade. He did not draw it again. Not yet. His voice came calm, each word chosen like a route stone turned in the dark. This confirms contamination. The condemned woman's wound was made during the ambush. A blade memory can cling to flesh and distort quarry reading. Scarblade records cannot be tried through a maid's wound. Sera almost laughed. The sound would have broken something in her throat, so she kept it inside. A maid's wound, she repeated. You make it sound as if I borrowed it. Garen looked down at her. You survived what loyal hunters did not. I warned them. You screamed in panic. I warned them before the arrows. The quarry mark before his blade lowered its mist-made head. The horn's runes brightened. Rovan stood halfway down from the throne platform, close enough now that Sera could see the dried tension around his eyes. His wolf shadow moved behind him along the wall, not toward her. Not in submission, not in devotion. It tracked Garen's hand and the blade at his belt, with the patience of a beast that had once ignored its own warning and never forgiven itself. Rovan said, "Let the horn read." Garen turned sharply. "Majesty, if the record continues through her scar, the court will not accept it as clean. The wound is the contact. The wound is also the accusation." Sera heard the trap. If Rovan forced the reading, Garen would call it royal pressure. If Rovan seized the blade, the commanders would call the Horn of True Quarry corrupted by fear. If Sera stopped, her scar would remain what the court wanted it to be, proof that she had survived wrongly. She leaned toward the horn, still on her knees. "Read what made my scar." The hall chilled. Garen's hand closed around the hilt. Rovan moved one step. Sera did not look at him, but she felt the movement like air before a storm. "Do not," she said. The king stopped. Her scar burned harder. "If you take the blade before it reads," she said, voice low, "he will say, 'You protected me from the proof.'" Garen's mouth tightened. Rovan's wolf shadow pressed its claws into the wall, but the king kept his hands open. Then he said the sentence the court needed to hear, and Sera needed to survive. "If her scar is the only contact, then my trial is still using the wound he left." His admission did not clean the trial. It only made the dirt visible. The Horn of True Quarry sounded again. This call was thinner than the first, sharper, closer to metal dragged along bone. The quarry mark before Garen's blade opened its jaws, and the mist around its teeth turned dark with rainwater. 4 lines formed across the horn's silver curve. Commander Blade entered. Servant witness cut. Ravine warning silenced. Blame mark left. The horn had named the blade. It had not yet named what her warning had seen. Sera's vision blurred. For a breath, she was back in the eastern ravine. Her hands were full of water skins. Her dress was soaked from rain. She was shouting that the route stones had been turned, shouting that the ravine smelled of men, not wolves. One hunter cursed at her to move aside. Another laughed because a maid warning warriors seemed almost funny before the first arrow fell. Then she saw Garen, not in the center of the path. At the side between 2 black-rooted trees, white glove raised blade already drawn. He had not cut her because she was in the way. He had cut her because she had spoken, and because what she had smelled in the ravine was not wolf. The memory tore through her cheek with the same cold line. Sera bowed forward, but she did not fall. Garen drew the blade fully now. Blue-silver light ran along its edge, revealing what polish had hidden a thin dark line near the base, not blood anymore, but a memory of where blood had been. "Enough," Garen said. "The wound is repeating pain." Sera lifted her face toward him. Her scar burned bright under the hornlight. "You wanted my scar to prove I survived wrongly," she said. "It proves who tried to stop me speaking. It proves why my warning had to become panic." A sound moved through the court, not belief yet, but fear of belief. That was worse for Garen. He raised the blade toward the Horn of True Quarry, not to strike Sera, but to cut the silver mist between horn and scar. Rovan's hand went to his sword. Garen saw it and smiled without warmth. "Touch me now, Majesty. And every commander here will testify that you broke hunt law to save a servant from her own wound." Rovan froze. Sera understood again. Force would restore the traitor claim. So she stayed kneeling and leaned closer to the horn until the silver mouth faced the scar Garen had made. "Read before he cuts the record." The horn answered one last time. The ravine returned in a single brutal image. Sera shouting at the hunters to turn back, Garen's blade flashing across her face, her blood hitting the leaves and the altered route stones standing behind him like quiet witnesses. Sera's scar had not marked her as traitor. Garen's blade had opened her face after she warned the hunt away from the ravine, cutting the only lower witness so the altered path could be blamed on the wound that survived. But the blade had only silenced the warning. It had not named the men waiting where wolves were supposed to be. The Horn of True Quarry had named the blade, but not what waited in the ravine. Sera's scar still burned beneath the hornlight, a thin white fire drawn from cheekbone to jaw. The court stared at the wound as if it had become a doorway and not flesh. She remained on her knees, hands bound, dress damp with cold sweat beneath the black stone dais. Nothing about the record had lifted her higher. Nothing about the truth had made the cord loosen. The quarry marks stayed where the horn had placed them. One before Garen's blade, several facing Rovan's throne. Others angled toward the silver mist, where the ravine kept returning in pieces, black roots, rainwater turned stones, and leaves darkened by blood. They did not circle Sera. They did not guard her. They pointed, and pointing was only useful if someone powerful chose to follow. Garen Mael sheathed his hunting blade with controlled slowness, as if the act of putting iron away could make the memory vanish with it. "Enough," he said. "The wound has overreached its lawful range." Sera looked up through the ache in her face. "My wound did not reach for the horn. You brought me to it." A murmur moved through the hunters. Garen turned sharply toward them and the sound died. Then he faced Rovan. "Majesty, the Horn of True Quarry has already produced unstable readings through scar contact. Glove blade route, each layer is being dragged through the same servant wound. Ambush records cannot be tried through a servant's scar." Rovan's wolf shadow pressed against the wall behind him, vast and silent, its eyes fixed on the mist of the ravine. The beast had stopped looking at Garen alone. Now it watched the empty spaces between the black roots in the vision, the places where no wolf had appeared, yet the air still smelled of danger. Sera felt it too. That was what had made her warning rise in the rain. Not wolf. Something wearing wolf. She leaned closer to the Horn of True Quarry. Garen's voice snapped. "Do not let her speak again." Rovan did not move. The court waited for his command. He looked at Sera, and she saw the conflict cut through his face, like moonlight through a blade. If he stopped her, he completed the trial against her. If he seized Garen, he gave the commanders a clean argument. Royal grief had touched the record. The horn would become politics, and Sera's scar would return to being only a stain on a maid's face. Sera saved him from choosing too early. Read what waited where wolves should have been. The Horn of True Quarry sounded. This time the call did not roll through the hall. It sank. The air turned wet and green-black, heavy, with the memory of roots drinking rain. The quarry marks lifted their muzzles, not howling, only scenting. Their silver bodies thinned until each became a line, a direction, a path pulled out of the old hunt. Mist spread across the floor. 4 lines burned through it. False wolf scent laid. Hunter line positioned. Royal guard thinned. 7 hunters sacrificed. The hall went deathly still. Rovan's eyes fixed on the first line. "False wolf scent," he said. Garen bowed his head, but not in surrender. A common tactic among border packs. The ambushers used scent to confuse the royal hunt. Sera turned her face toward him. "No. The scent was laid before the arrows. You cannot know that. I warned them before the arrows. You panicked before battle." Sera's voice sharpened for the first time. "You called it panic because warning from a maid was harder to obey than orders from a murderer." The court recoiled, not because they believed her fully, because she had said the word aloud. "Murderer." Garen's hand twitched toward his glove. Rovan saw it. So did the horn. The black thread across Garen's command glove flared, and one quarry mark broke from the mist, pointing not at his body but at his wrist. The horn was not accusing a man yet. It was following the tools that had made the hunt lie. Rovan stepped down to the hall floor. Garen turned at once. "Majesty, I caution you. If you arrest a commander before the full hunt council reviews the horn's instability, you will make this servant's wound stronger than royal law." Rovan stopped. His jaw clenched. Sera knew what that restraint cost him, but cost did not make it clean. He had restrained himself before, too. He had let ceremony proceed. He had let a scarred maid kneel because law made her easier to doubt. His voice came low. If her warning was cut before the arrows fell, then my hunt followed silence. I mistook for order. No noble moved. No commander answered. The words did not free Sera. They placed the king's failure beside the ambush. The Horn of True Quarry deepened its call. The mist showed the ravine again. Men stood between the black roots, cloaked in wet gray hides rubbed with false wolf scent. Their faces were covered with bone masks, shaped like snarling muzzles. They were not wolves. They were hunters disguised as the thing they wanted blamed. Higher along the ravine wall, royal guards were missing from positions they should have held. 7 hunters rode forward into the narrowed path. Unaware they had already become bodies the story needed, Garin lifted his blade. Not toward Sera. Toward the mist. Rovan's hand went to his sword. Sera said no. The word tore her scar with heat. If he cuts it now, she breathed, he will say you feared what the ambush showed. Garin's mouth thinned. The blade came down anyway. The Horn of True Quarry blared before iron touched mist. Every quarry mark snapped toward the ravine image. Men wearing false wolf scent had waited between the black roots, placed along the altered route after Garin thinned the royal guard, and turned 7 hunters into proof of an ambush he had arranged. The ravine image did not vanish when Garin's blade struck toward it. It bent around the iron. The Horn of True Quarry held the memory in place, thin but unbroken, while the blade passed through silver mist and came out wet with blue light. Garin lowered his hand with the first visible crack in his control. Not fear, not yet. Fear required a man to believe judgment could reach him. Garin only looked offended that the horn had refused his authority. Sera stayed on her knees beneath the silver curve, breathing through the fire in her scar. The court had seen men where wolves should have been. Still no one moved to unbind her. A truth could enter a hall and still stand there waiting for permission. Rovan stood at the edge of the mist, his black armor reflecting the ravine's rain. His wolf shadow stretched behind him across the wall, no longer frozen in distrust. It moved restlessly now, following each false wolf scent line, each missing guard post, each place where the hunt had been made narrow enough for death. Garin turned toward the commanders. False scent proves an outside ambush. Sera looked up. Then why did your glove turn the route toward it? Because route conditions changed. Changed by whom Garin's eyes cut to her. The condemned maid is not entitled to interrogate royal command. She is the contact, Rovan said. The room sharpened around his voice. Garin bowed stiffly. And that is the problem, Majesty. The contact is scarred, frightened, and accused. Ambush line records cannot be made clean through the body of a woman desperate to survive judgment. Sera's hands tightened inside the cord. He always made survival sound like guilt. The horn's silver runes pulsed near her face, close enough for the light to touch the ridge of her scar. She understood what Garin was doing. If he could make the court distrust the contact, every record would become a wound talking too loudly. She leaned toward the horn. Read who thinned the royal guard. Garin's blade lifted. Rovan moved one step, then stopped before Garin could use the interruption. The king understood the trap now. Force would make him look like a wounded ruler protecting his pride. Restraint would leave Sera kneeling beneath the cost of truth. Neither choice was clean. That was how Garin had built the trial. Every path out still used her. The Horn of True Quarry sounded before anyone could forbid it. The quarry-marks turned from the ravine image toward the empty spaces where royal guards should have stood. Their bodies thinned again into silver lines stretching across the floor like drawn roots. 4 new lines appeared. Guard posts emptied. Inner ring withdrawn. Retreat signal delayed. King path exposed. Rovan's face changed at the second line. Inner ring withdrawn. A low growl escaped his wolf shadow, not aimed at Sera, not even at Garin alone, but at the old memory of obedience that had made skilled guards leave their king exposed because the right voice had told them to. Garin spoke quickly. The inner ring was repositioned after the scent report. Standard hunt protection. Sera said protection that opened the king's side. The ambush made it appear that way. The horn made it appear that way. Garin's jaw tightened. Rovan looked at him. Who gave the withdrawal order? Garin did not hesitate. That made the answer worse. Your Majesty did. The court breathed in. Rovan went still. Sera looked from Garin to the king, and for the first time since the horn began reading, She saw something colder than anger move through Rovan's face. Not denial. Memory. The ravine swallowed sound, he said slowly. I heard a horn behind us. Garen bowed. Your recall is correct. You signaled the inner ring to adjust. Rovan's wolf shadow shook its head once violently. Sera felt the scar on her cheek tighten again, as if the horn had found another edge beneath the first cut. Read the signal, she whispered. Garen snapped. No signal record can be tried through her scar. Sera turned to him. Then why does my scar burn when you say signal? The horn answered. Not with a full call. With one thin note that made every hunting banner ripple. Mist coiled above the floor and shaped itself into a smaller horn, dark bronze, instead of silver lifted between black roots in the ravine. A gloved hand held it. A soundless blast left its mouth. Rovan took a step back. That was not my horn. Garen's expression did not break. In the rain, all hunt calls distort. The horn of True Quarry burned brighter. False retreat sounded. Royal command imitated. Inner guard obeyed. King left open. Sera swayed. The record pulled through her scar so sharply that the hall split for a moment between stone and forest. She saw guards turning away from Rovan, not cowardly, not traitorous, only obedient to a signal shaped like royal command. She saw the king riding forward with 7 hunters, his inner ring gone, his royal scent already marked the ravine waiting. Rovan's voice dropped. My hunt followed a false retreat, Garen said. Or grief has made the horn remember noise as treason. Sera lifted her face pale under the silver light. You made noise into law when it helped you. Now you call it grief, when it points back. A few nobles looked away. Not from her. From Garen. That was when he stepped close to the Horn of True Quarry again, glove raised, blade angled low. This time Rovan did not reach for his sword. He looked at Sera. What does it need? The question shook her more than anger would have. Sera swallowed pain. Not rescue. Room. Rovan turned to the court. No one touches the horn. No one touches the witness. Witness. Not maid. Not traitor. Not free. But named differently. The Horn of True Quarry sounded one more time deeper than before, and the ravine memory widened to show the bronze false retreat horn in Garen's gloved hand. The royal guard had not abandoned Rovan in panic. They had obeyed a false retreat call carried by Garen's command glove, leaving the Alpha King exposed on the altered path, while Sera's warning died under the scar he had cut into her face. The false retreat call left the court with no clean place to look. Not at Sera. Not at Garen. Not at the Alpha King who had followed a sound he believed was his own command. The ravine memory hung beneath the Horn of True Quarry, silver and blue-black, showing the bronze horn in Garen's gloved hand. The image did not accuse with fury. It only remained. That made it worse. Anger could be dismissed as corruption. A record that simply stayed became harder to insult. Sera's knees had gone numb against the stone. The cord around her wrists had bitten deep enough to leave red lines, and her scar burned as if the forest rain still touched it. She could feel the horn pulling through the wound, not because it cared whether she survived the reading, but because her scar was the open place where the hunt had tried to bury its first witness. Rovan stood between the throne and the dais, no longer high above her, not yet beside her. His restraint had begun to look less like command and more like a wound he was forcing himself not to close with violence. Commander Garen Mael lowered his gloved hand. A false retreat note proves confusion during combat. Nothing more. Sera looked at the bronze horn in the mist. Confusion does not wear your glove. The image shows a hand, Garen said. Not intent. Rovan's voice was quiet. Then, let the horn read intent. Garen turned toward him. Intent is not hunt path. Intent belongs to judgment after council review. Sera understood that sentence. Delay. Always delay when truth began to point upward. A maid could be condemned in one horn call. A commander required review seal witness, counter witness, council hour, political season, and enough time for records to vanish. She lifted her face toward the Horn of True Quarry. Read why the king was marked. Garen's head snapped toward her. The court heard the fear under the word this time. Not confession, fear. There was a difference, and Garen still knew how to survive inside it. He straightened and spread his hands. Majesty, pray, intent records cannot be tried through a servant's scar. The wound has already distorted path, blade, and signal. If you allow it to read motive, every enemy of the throne will claim a scar and call it testimony. Sera breathed through the burn in her cheek. Every enemy of the throne did not carry water into your ravine. Garon's eyes sharpened. Rovan's wolf shadow moved behind him, huge and soundless, head low, ears fixed on the horn. It did not bow to Sera. It did not shield her. It waited because the king was finally waiting with it. Rovan said, "Read why I was marked." The Horn of True Quarry sounded. This call was deep enough to make the black stone tremble under Sera's knees. The quarry marks turned from the false retreat horn to the royal hunting banners above the hall. Mist climbed the walls and darkened the painted scenes of past victories, until one image remained: Rovan, riding into the eastern ravine with his guard thinned. His scent marked, and 7 hunters placed close enough to die around him. 4 lines formed in the air. King Death prepared. Commander's council waiting. Servant betrayal drafted. Crown hunt sealed. The hall broke into whispers. Not shock. Calculation. If the king had died in the ravine, someone would have needed to explain it before panic tore the kingdom open. Someone would have needed a betrayer ready. Someone low enough to execute quickly. Someone scarred enough to look guilty. Someone no noble house would defend. Sera looked down at her bound hands. She understood her place in the plan with sick clarity. She had not been an accident who survived the ambush. She had been the story left alive long enough to blame. Rovan read the 3rd line slowly. Servant betrayal drafted. Garin said contingency language. Every royal hunt carries a death protocol. A protocol naming her a lower servant near the route found alive, already suspicious by proximity. Sera looked at him. Already scarred by your blade. Garin ignored her. If the king had fallen, the realm would have needed order. Rovan took 1 step closer. And who would have given it? No one answered. The Horn of True Quarry did. The mist shifted again, showing the royal hall as it might have been. Black banners lowered. 7 dead hunters displayed Rovan's body under a wolf-hide bier. And Sera dragged forward with her scar uncovered for the court to see. Garin stood before the throne, white hunt cloak, clean command glove raised. The horn wrote across the vision. Hunt Council assumes command. Commander male names traitor. Scar witness executed. Succession delayed. Sera's breath caught. Not because death had been close. She had known that, since the ravine. Because the court had planned to use her face as a document. Rovan's expression turned colder than the silver horn. You prepared a throne delay. Garin bowed, but his voice hardened. A king's death requires continuity. The Hunt Council exists for such hours. Hours you arranged. Hours I prepared for. Sera looked at Rovan. You were not only prey. You were an opening. The words passed between them with dangerous weight. Rovan's face tightened, not in anger at her, but because she had named the part he could not escape. His death was the plot, but his authority had made the plot possible. His court had given commanders the power to turn paths, move guards, sound retreat, and draft servant guilt before the horn ever touched Sera's scar. Garin raised his blade again. This has gone beyond hunt law. Sera leaned toward the horn before he could cut the mist. Read who wrote my execution. The blade stopped. Rovan did not move. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Garin's calm finally cracked at the edge. No execution record exists, because the king lived, Sera whispered. Then why are you afraid of a record that was never used? The Horn of True Quarry answered with one thin, merciless note. The mist sharpened into parchment sealed in black wax, already bearing Sera's name before the trial had ever begun. The failed hunt had needed Rovan dead, Garon ruling through the Hunt Council, and Sera alive, just long enough for her scar to become the proof that a servant had betrayed the king. The black wax parchment hovered in the mist like a sentence waiting for a dead king. Sera saw her name on it before the court did. Sera Veyne. Lower hall maid. Ambush lure. Ambush, lure. To be executed under hunt law before moonrise. The words were neat. Official. Beautifully written by a hand that had never expected her to stand close enough to read them. Her scar burned under the Horn of True Quarry, but the heat had changed. It no longer felt like the blade reopening flesh. It felt like the wound refusing to let the court close its eyes. A noblewoman made a small sound behind her fan. One of the younger hunters whispered, "Before moonrise." Garin Mael turned on him with a look sharp enough to cut the question in half. Rovan did not look away from the parchment. His wolf shadow had gone still again, but not with obedience this time. It looked like a beast waiting at the edge of a trap, watching for the first step that would spring it. Garin's voice returned to ceremony. Death protocols are drafted before royal hunts. Every kingdom with enemies prepares for succession disorder. Sera lifted her bound hands slightly. My name was not succession disorder. Your proximity to the ravine made you relevant. My blood on the leaves made me useful. Garin's eyes narrowed. A maid does not interpret state documents. Then why did your document need my face? The Horn of True Quarry pulsed. The parchment turned slowly in the air, revealing a second seal below the first. Not the king's seal, but the Hunt Council's mark. 3 black antlers around a closed wolf's eye. Rovan read it aloud. Council Emergency Authority. Garin bowed. Only if your majesty had fallen. But I did not. No. Which is why the document was never enacted. Sera stared at the parchment. A knife does not become harmless because it stayed in its sheath. The court shifted. Garin stepped toward the horn, careful not to touch it this time. Majesty, this is precisely why the reading must stop. The condemned woman is turning unused emergency language into accusation. Dead laws, unspent drafts, and panic documents cannot be tried through a servant's scar. Sera heard the new phrase inside the old one. Not scar contamination now. Draft contamination. Every layer that named him became a reason to distrust the wound he had made. She leaned closer to the horn. Read who sealed my death before the trial. Garin's jaw tightened. No. Rovan did not move, but his voice dropped. Let it answer. Garin turned to him. If the horn reads unspent execution drafts, every royal command prepared in crisis becomes vulnerable. Rovan's eyes flashed. If it prepared an innocent woman's death before judgment, it was already vulnerable. The horn sounded. The quarry-marks turned away from the ravine image and toward the black wax parchment. Their bodies became thin silver trails wrapping around the seals, not tearing them, only exposing the path each mark had taken. 4 lines opened above Sera's name. Trial verdict drafted. Scar display ordered. Maid death required. Council rule secured. The hall seemed to tilt. Sera could not breathe for one long moment. Maid death required. Not possible. Not convenient. Required. She had not merely been blamed because she survived. She had been kept alive because the story needed a living traitor to kill in front of the court. Her scar had been cut to silence her warning, then preserved to decorate her guilt. Then displayed so the Hunt Council could turn panic into authority. Rovan's face hardened. Required for what Garin said order. Sera looked at him. Your order. The realm's order. No, she said. The realm was supposed to mourn. You needed it afraid. The Horn of True Quarry answered before Garin could. Mist rose around the throne and showed a different Caelthrone Rovan dead beneath a black pelt. 7 hunters laid at the foot of the steps, commanders standing before a court too terrified to question them. Sera was there too, dragged forward with her scar-uncovered face, pale hands bound exactly as they were now. A Garin of memory raised the parchment. The court in the vision shouted for blood before Sera in the present could hear herself breathe. Rovan took a step toward her. Sera whispered, Do not make them say you saved me from a record. He stopped. The restraint shook through him. Garin saw it and struck where restraint hurt. Majesty, she directs you now. A condemned maid controls the reading and the king. Is that not proof enough that the horn has become unsafe? Sera turned her face toward the silver mouth. Her scar was bright now, almost white under the horn light. I am not controlling it, she said. I am asking the questions you hoped no one would ask. The quarry-marks lifted their heads. For the first time, the Horn of True Quarry made no sound at all. Instead, the runes along its silver curve opened like eyes. The air pressed against Sera's scar, then against her bound hands, then against the old blood memory inside the parchment. A final line appeared beneath the others. Reader contact sustained. Garin went utterly still. Rovan saw the change in him. What does that mean? Garin recovered too quickly. An error. Sera felt the horn's silence sink into her bones. Reader contact. Not chosen. Not crowned. Not loved. A function. A witness. A body the hunt record could read because the blade, the path, the false scent, and the death draft had all tried to make her into proof. Rovan looked at Garen. You knew what she was. Garen's hand tightened around his blade. I knew she was dangerous. The Horn of True Quarry sounded once low and clean. The parchment twisted again, and another hidden mark burned through the black wax above Sera's name. Hunt Horn Reader eliminate if surviving. The hidden mark burned through the black wax, and the court finally understood why Sera had been kept alive. Not spared. Kept. The words above her name glowed in the mist with a cold silver edge, clear enough for every hunter, noble, and commander to read. Hunt Horn Reader. Eliminate if surviving. Sera stared at the mark until the hall blurred around it. She had no hidden wolf rising beneath her skin. No royal blood answered from the stones. No moon crown appeared above her head. She was still a scarred maid on her knees, with cord around her wrists and pain cutting through her cheek. But the horn had named what Garen had known before the trial began. She was not dangerous because she had betrayed the hunt. She was dangerous because the hunt could still read through her. Garen spoke before fear could settle into the court properly. Forbidden contact. The phrase came sharp and practiced. Sera almost smiled, though her mouth trembled from pain. Another name. Garen turned to the hall. Hunthorn readers were outlawed after the old border wars. Their wounds distort quarry law. Their questions can turn a royal relic against its own court. This woman is not a witness. She is a forbidden instrument. The court stirred at that. Forbidden sounded easier than innocent. Instrument sounded safer than woman. Rovan's wolf shadow flattened its ears against the wall. Not in submission, not in fear of Sera, but in hatred of the shape Garon's words gave the room. Rovan looked at the black wax parchment. If she was forbidden, why bring her before the horn? Garen did not hesitate. To confirm contamination. Sera lifted her bound hands slightly. No. To make the horn condemn me, before anyone asked what I could read. His eyes cut to her. There. A thin break in the mask. The Horn of True Quarry hummed under her words, low and waiting. Sera leaned toward it, though every movement pulled fire through her scar. Read why I was brought alive. Garen stepped forward. The reader has no right to question her own judgment. Rovan's voice struck colder. She has more right than the man whose seal ordered her death before trial. Garen bowed stiffly. Majesty, if you allow a Hunthorn reader to direct the relic, the Hunt Council will declare this entire proceeding corrupted. Sera heard the trap change shape again. If she asked, she corrupted the horn. If Rovan defended her, he corrupted the court. If Garen answered nothing, the old draft stayed only partly read, just enough to terrify everyone, not enough to end him. She looked at Rovan. Do not defend me from the question. His jaw tightened. She could see the instinct in him, the violent need to end the cord, seize Garen, break the blade, and call that justice. But force had teeth in this hall, and every tooth pointed back toward her. Rovan lowered his hand from his sword. Ask, he said. The Horn of True Quarry sounded. The quarry-marks moved not toward Sera, not around her, but toward the parchment and the horn itself, as if tracing the path that had brought wound to relic. Silver lines wrapped around the black wax, then down toward the floor, then back to Sera's scar. 4 lines opened in the air. Reader contact required. False verdict intended. Execution, seals route. Hunt Council, inherits. The court went silent in a new way. Not shock now. Understanding. Sera had been dragged to the Horn of True Quarry not because Garen feared it would fail. He had needed it to appear to succeed. He had needed the horn to use her scar bend under the prepared record, name her as quarry, and make her death seal the false hunt forever. If she died condemned, the altered path became law. If the king had died, the Hunt Council ruled through fear. If both survived, Garen still had a maid ready to blame. Sera whispered, You needed my death to close the root. Garen's face hardened. I needed a kingdom not to tear itself apart. You arranged the tearing. I preserved command. You preserved yourself. The Horn of True Quarry flared. Rovan read the final line again. Hunt Council inherits. He looked toward the commanders standing beneath the right balcony. None met his eyes. Some looked shocked. Some looked guilty. Some looked only careful. That carefulness told Sera more than panic would have. Garen had not acted alone in silence. He had acted inside a system that knew how to benefit if he survived long enough to name the prey. Rovan took one step toward the commanders. Garen moved faster. His blade flashed toward Sera, not in a wide attack, not theatrical but low and precise, aimed for the scar that kept the horn reading. This time Rovan moved too. Sera saw the disaster before the blade reached her. If Rovan struck Garen first, the commanders would cry royal interference. If Garen cut her scar, the horn's contact might collapse. Either path put truth back in their hands. She twisted sideways on her knees. The blade missed her scar and sliced the cord around her wrists. Pain snapped through her shoulders as her bound hands tore free. The court gasped. Garen stepped back, instantly lifting the blade as if he had meant to cut restraint, not witness. "See," he said. The reader moves the record. Sera's wrists burned where the cord had broken skin. For the first time since the trial began, her hands were free. But freedom given by an enemy could become another trap. She did not stand. She placed both bleeding wrists on the black stone before the Horn of True Quarry, then read what the council inherits. The horn answered with a sound so deep, the throne itself trembled. The mist behind the commanders split open, revealing not the ravine this time, but a sealed chamber beneath the Hunt Council Hall. Inside, 3 command gloves rested beside 3 unsigned death drafts, each bearing Rovan's seal copied in black wax. Garen had not prepared one false hunt. He had prepared the method to make any king servant or witness into prey whenever the council needed power to pass through blood. The sealed chamber beneath the Hunt Council Hall was not a memory of one crime. It was a machine. The vision hung behind the commander's blue, silver, and merciless 3 command gloves, placed in a row, 3 unsigned death drafts waiting beside them, and black wax seals copied in the shape of Rovan's authority. Each seal looked official enough to end a life. Each draft held an empty space where a name could be written after the court had already been taught whom to fear. A servant. A witness. A king. Anyone could become prey if the council held the glove, the route, and the seal. Sera's freed wrists shook against the black stone before the Horn of True Quarry. The cord had broken, but her body still understood restraint. She did not stand. Standing too soon would let Garen say she had seized the court. Kneeling kept the contact low enough for them to keep using her, but it also kept the horn reading what they had buried under law. Rovan saw it. She knew he did because his eyes dropped to her wrists, then to her scar, then to the horn. His face changed with the kind of guilt that did not ask to be comforted. Garen Mael stepped backward toward the commanders. A forbidden reader has opened restricted council storage. That is not testimony. That is invasion. Sera's voice scraped. The room opened because your drafts were connected to the hunt. The council prepares for disorder. The council prepared prey. Several commanders shifted behind him. Not all. That was the terrible part. Some looked horrified. Others looked careful. Careful men were the ones who had known enough to survive either outcome. Rovan took one step toward the vision. Garen lifted his blade. "Majesty, do not touch." A record opened through her scar. Rovan stopped. The trap still lived. If he touched the vision, they would call it royal interference. If Sera kept holding it, they would call it reader corruption. If the horn closed now, the council would bury the chamber deeper and claim the trial had failed because a maid's wound overreached its station. Sera leaned closer to the Horn of True Quarry. Her scar burned so fiercely she had to bite down on the inside of her cheek to keep from crying out. "Read how to close the false route." Garen snapped. "No reader decides closure." The horn sounded anyway. This time the quarry-marks did not move toward Garen the throne or the sealed chamber. They turned toward Rovan's hand. His signet ring caught the blue light. 4 lines appeared in the air. Copied seal challenged. Living seal required. Scar contact insufficient. King command must answer. The court turned toward Rovan, as if the horn had placed an arrow in every eye. Sera understood before the court did. The horn had used her scar to open the buried path because the blade had made her the wound contact. But it could not close a crime built on copied royal authority through the same wound. If the council had stolen the king's command, only the living king's command could answer it. Rovan looked at her. "It needs my seal." Sera breathed through the pain. "Not over my scar." His jaw tightened once. No. Garen said, Majesty, if you place your living seal into a corrupted reading, every command you have ever given under hunt law can be challenged. Rovan looked at him. Good. The words struck the hall colder than anger. He removed the black signet ring from his hand. The motion was small. The effect was not. Every commander knew what it meant. A king's signet was not jewelry. It was voice order, punishment, passage, inheritance, death. For Rovan to place it under the Horn of True Quarry was not rescue. It was exposure. It meant allowing the relic to test the difference between his living will and every borrowed shape of his authority. He stepped toward the horn. Garen's blade lifted. Sera said, if he strikes, read the blade again. The quarry mark before Garen lowered its head. Garen froze. Rovan reached the horn's black stone stand and stopped beside Sera. He did not touch her. He did not lift her. He did not make the court look at them as if closeness were proof of innocence. He set the signet ring on the stone before the horn. Read my seal against the copies. The Horn of True Quarry sounded. The living ring burned gold-white. The copied seals in the vision blackened at the edges. 4 lines opened across the chamber wall. Royal seal copied. Hunt command forged. Death drafts prepared. Council succession armed. A low, ugly sound moved through the court. Not from the wolves. From men realizing the weapon had never been made for one maid. Rovan read the last line. Council succession armed. Garen's voice hardened. A kingdom cannot survive if command dies with one man. A kingdom cannot survive if command is murdered before the man dies, Rovan said. The Horn of True Quarry flared. The sealed chamber vision widened. Beneath the 3 drafts lay more parchment old names. Older routes failed, hunt records, dead border envoys, missing witnesses, rival heirs marked as prey after inconvenient disputes. The council had not invented this method for Rovan. They had inherited it, perfected it, dressed it in hunt law until murder wore antlers and sounded like order. Sera lifted her face scar-blazing white under the hornlight. Read the first law that armed them. Garen shouted, enough, his blade came up. Rovan moved between blade and horn but still did not seize him. He only stood in the line of the strike, making Garen choose whether to cut the living king in front of the court. Garen stopped an inch short. The Horn of True Quarry gave one final call. The oldest parchment rose from the sealed chamber, blackened with age, and marked by the first command glove. First prey law entered. Council may name quarry if crown is unstable. Reader witnesses forbidden. Living king removable. The court seemed to stop breathing. Rovan's expression did not change, but his wolf shadow went utterly still behind him. Sera understood the final trap. The law had not merely allowed the council to inherit after a king's death. It allowed them to make a living king into prey by first declaring his command unstable, then silencing any hunthorn reader who could prove the path had been altered. The oldest prey law stayed open above the hall, and every commander beneath it looked suddenly less like a guardian of the crown. Sera saw it in their hands first. Men who had held sword hilts with certainty now loosened their grip. Others tightened theirs. The careful ones looked toward Garen Mael, measuring whether power still lived with him, or whether the Horn of True Quarry had cut the path out from under his feet. Rovan stood beside the black stone, stand his living signet burning gold-white before the silver horn. He had placed himself between Garen's blade and the record, but he had not seized the commander. Not yet. The court needed to see the law finish naming itself before any arrest could be called vengeance. Sera remained on her knees. Her wrists were free now, but freedom without standing was another kind of cord. Her scar burned less like an open wound, and more like a mark being read to its final line. Garen lowered his blade an inch, and lifted his voice instead. You all heard it. The law exists. If crown stability is questioned, the council may name quarry. A king who submits his authority to a forbidden reader proves instability by the act itself. Several commanders looked toward Rovan. There it was. Not confession. Doctrine sharpened into a weapon. Sera placed one hand on the stone before the horn. Read. What makes a crown unstable? Garen snapped. She cannot ask that. Rovan did not look away from the old parchment. She can. The Horn of True Quarry sounded. The quarry marks turned from the commanders toward the ancient prey law. They did not attack it. They did not tear it. They pointed at the words one by one until silver light burned through the old ink. Copied command accepted. Reader witness silenced. Hunt path hidden. Council names pray. Sera breathed out slowly. A crown became unstable when its court obeyed, stolen command and murdered the witness that could prove the path had been changed. Not when a king allowed truth to be read. Rovan understood at the same moment. His face did not soften. It steadied. The council did not protect the crown from instability, he said. It created instability, and called itself remedy. Garen's jaw hardened. The council preserved succession. You armed succession against a living king. Because living kings can fail. Rovan looked down at Sera. The hall narrowed around that glance. She saw the part of him that still wanted to end this with steel. She also saw the part that knew steel would make the record smaller than the truth. He had learned too late that forcing a clean outcome over a dirty right only buried the dirt deeper. What does the horn need to close it? He asked. Sera looked at the silver mouth of the Horn of True Quarry. Not my wound alone. No. Not your command alone. No. She understood then. The crime had used both of them in opposite ways. His authority copied, her wound blamed. The closure needed both corrected, without making either one consume the other. Living seal beside reader contact, she said. Not over it. Rovan nodded once. He moved the signet ring closer to her hand, then stopped before his fingers touched hers. May I place it there? The question struck harder than command. Sera looked at the ring, then at him. Beside. Not over. Beside. He placed the ring on the stone next to her scarlet hand. The Horn of True Quarry sounded for the last time. The gold-white seal and the blue-silver scarlight met without crossing. The quarry-marks lifted their heads toward the ancient prey-law. Lines of silver fire ran through the parchment, through the copied seals, through the 3 command gloves in the hidden chamber below the Hunt Council Hall. 4 final lines opened above the throne. Reader witness restored. Copied command void. Council prey-law broken. True Quarry returned. Garen stepped back. The quarry-marks turned. Not toward Sera. Not toward Rovan. Toward him. Every silver line in the hall pointed to the white command glove on his hand, the blade at his belt, the false retreat horn in the ravine memory, and the black wax death draft prepared with Sera's name. Garen raised his blade, but no commander moved with him. That was his first real defeat. The second came when Rovan spoke. Commander Garen Mael is stripped of hunt authority. The Hunt Council's emergency prey law is void under living seal and reader witness. Every hunt path, death draft, and quarry judgment issued under copied command will be reopened. Garen's face twisted. You will break the royal hunts. No, Sera said, rising carefully from her knees. He will break the part that needed victims before it needed truth. Her legs shook when she stood. No hidden wolf rose behind her. No spectral pack bowed. The quarry marks remained what they had always been, records, shaped like direction. They watched the path end where it should have ended from the beginning. At Garen. Rovan turned toward Sera, but he did not reach for her. The charge against you is void. Void is not enough. He held her gaze. No. The court listened. Sera's scar had stopped burning. It ached now as flesh did after being asked to carry more than flesh should carry. I will not be remembered as the maid the horn almost condemned, she said. Rovan bowed his head, not as a lover before a mate, not as a king choosing a woman to decorate his mercy, but as a ruler facing the witness his own ceremony had used. Then you will be recorded as Sera Veyne Hunthorn Reader, living witness of the altered path. Garen was taken by guards who no longer looked toward the council balcony for permission. As he passed her, his eyes burned with hatred. A scarred maid cannot hold a kingdom together. Sera looked at the Horn of True Quarry, then at the silent court that had finally run out of cleaner lies. No, she said. But she can show where it was cut. Rovan walked beside her down from the horn stand, close enough to face the hall with her, far enough not to claim her survival as his gift. His wolf shadow followed along the wall, still wary, still wounded, but no longer watching the commanders for permission to trust its own warning. At the doors of Caelthrone, Rovan stopped. When this court is remade, he said, I would have you there. Sera looked at him through the ache of her scar and the long exhaustion of being used as proof. As witness, as standing. The answer did not heal what had happened, but it did not try to. So Sera stepped through the open doors on her own feet, leaving the Horn of True Quarry behind her, no longer condemned by the scar Garen had made, but recognized as the reader who had forced a kingdom to follow the path back to its true Sera. Pray.